Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. I'm Tony Southcott and today we're going to be talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 classic from Tobe Hooper. This is one of the best small budget movies you're going to watch in the horror genre, especially from the 70s. It is absolutely incredible for its generation and the impact is still being felt today. This is essential watching, but let's get to the facts. Fact number 1, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house is now a restaurant. The house used in this movie was taken piece by piece from a town near Round Rock, Texas, and moved to Kingsland. It now sits on the grounds of the Kingsland Grand Central Hotel and functions under the name the Grand Central Cafe. Basically, they just took this house piece by piece and brought it to Kingsland and reassembled it. And I imagine this was no small undertaking because that house was trashed. They had animal blood sprayed all over the walls that they got from a butcher. They had bodies rotting in that place for a good long time, and all the elements and everything else that go into being a near abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, Texas. There was a lot that they had to do to get this thing going. So, if you're ever out in the middle of Texas and you end up going through Kingsland, it's probably worth stopping by. You actually can get the room where the dining room scene happened if you call ahead, so that's pretty cool. Fact number 2. The intro is a political commentary as much as it is an outright lie. At the beginning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we get a narration and an opening paragraph detailing how this is a true story. Tobe Hooper included this introduction as a short bit against the political climate of the era, where he felt that we were being lied to about the oil crisis, about the Vietnam War and the atrocities that happened there, Watergate, and so many other things. So he thought, why not just add to it? Say it's a full-on true story. Go like the Coen brothers did for Fargo. He figured if they were so flippantly bending the truth, lying, and keeping things from us, why should he have to make it so that this isn't a true story? This story does have some truth behind it, though, because it is based on Ed Gein, at least superficially. Ed Gein only murdered a couple people, but he was a ghoul that would go and rob graves, like the Hitch-Hiker in this film. And also, he was one that would wear faces and try to make a suit. It also was part of what inspired Silence the Lambs and everything else later. So there are nuggets of truth here, but never a family quite like this. Fact number 3. Here's a bunch of facts on creating Leatherface. Tobe Hooper and Gunnar Hansen collaborated on the creation of Leatherface. Hansen decided that the character would be mentally stunted, never having any actual speaking moments. He would make a lot of noise, he would move differently, but he wanted it to seem like a handicapped person. He went out to schools for the mentally handicapped and watched how students moved and spoke, and he tried to emulate that as best he could. He really didn't want it to be offensive, so he wanted to be as accurate as he could for someone in that condition. The idea for a chainsaw, though, came from Tobe Hooper as he was at a hardware store and it was super crowded, and he just kept trying to think of the best ways to get to the front and get all of his shopping done. He figured that the chainsaw would be a pretty effective way of getting that done. Leatherface's teeth were actually prostheses made by Gunnar Hansen and his dentist. They were all blocky and interesting. It was a very different type of mouth whenever you actually saw him smiling. Leatherface wore 3 different masks in the film: the killing mask, the old lady mask, and the pretty girl mask. Each of these masks informed how he would be acting in these particular moments. He took on the characteristics of those characters while he was in each mask. The old lady mask, he was basically very, very meek, very kind of attentive, very suggestible, and with the killing mask, he was basically full-on psychopathic. Fact number 4, the film took a huge toll on its actors. Almost every actor in this film suffered some sort of injury. It was just a terribly excruciating set. It was over 110 degrees most of the days, and they didn't take any time off from filming this because they had to get their rental equipment back at a certain time. So you had an entire month in 110 degree Texas heat, full humidity, not a single fan or air conditioner on the set. For Pam's Meathook death scene, Terry McVin was actually held up by a nylon cord that went between her legs, and it was padded with maxi pads, but it was still incredibly painful. She decided that she was just going to use that pain and discomfort for the scene to make it more authentic. Marilyn Burns suffered many cuts and bruises while running from Leatherface. Much of the blood on her clothes is actually her blood from whenever she's getting hit with branches, she's falling over, and she's just generally scuffing and bruising herself over and over and over again. The scene where her finger's bleeding and the grandfather actually sucks it off of her fingers, which is one of the most creepy moments of the entire film, because I straight up thought that dude was dead. that was actually her blood, because the pump they were using was not getting the blood to her finger properly, so she just moved her finger to cut it, and he went after it. Gunnar Hansen was not allowed to wash his clothes at all during this because they didn't want any discoloration happening. They didn't trust the clothes would be returned fast enough. So basically, for this entire month, he's having to be in the same outfit the whole time, also wearing the Leatherface mask for 12 to 16 hours a day for an entire month. Gunnar Hansen was in excruciating condition by the end of this set. John Dugan, the grandfather, also had to endure a lot for his, but it was a much quicker thing. Once they did the one-time application of his makeup, he said that he was not doing it again. So they decided that over the next 36 hours they would film every sequence of his without taking the makeup off. If you remember right, he is completely covered in like a liquid latex type coating to make him look desiccated and dead. And he was in a full suit, like a tie and all, for the whole time that he had to do that. So he was a very hurting unit as that was going on. The entire cast, crew, and set people were basically inundated with horrible smells anytime they were filming inside the house. Because they actually had rotting cattle around in various states of decay, that smell was just perforating the house. Anytime anybody stepped inside of it, you just had the smell of rot in the middle of the summer. The fruit and everything else on the table was rotting. Everything was going bad for this set, and they wanted that because it was giving it a particular look, but it was just excruciating to be on that set. Edwin Neal, who played the Hitch-Hiker, claimed, "Filming that scene was the worst time of my life, and I had been in Vietnam with people trying to kill me, so I guess that was how bad it was." He also said that if he ever saw Tobe Hooper again, he would kill him. One of the crew members, Dorothy J. Pearl, accidentally injected herself in the leg with formaldehyde while preparing one of the props, so not even just the cast, but also the crew. There are a myriad of other injuries as well, but this is kind of going on a while, so we're going to get to fact number 5. Fact number 5, the film's original distributor turned out to be a mafia front. The film's original distributor was Bryanston Distribution Company, which turned out to be a mafia front by Louis Periano, or Butchie, who has used the movie to launder profits he made from the movie Deep Throat. In return, the production received only enough money to reimburse the investors and pay the cast and crew about $405 apiece. That is nothing for a month's work, even in the 70s. The producers eventually discovered that Periano had lied to them about the film's profits. After he was arrested on obscenity charges when his role in Deep Throat was revealed, the cast and crew filed suit against him and were rewarded $25,000 each. New Line Cinema, which obtained the rights of the film from the now bankrupt Bryanston, paid off the cast and crew as part of the purchase agreement. This was many, many years later, but I'm very glad they did get some money, and I hear that they're still getting percentages based off of DVD sales. There's a brand new steel-covered copy coming out on Blu-ray, remaster, everything, so that would be a good time to pick this up, and it helps all these actors, even though a lot of them have already passed. It's kind of sad. Keep in mind that this movie was made for under $300,000, and it grossed more than $30 million in theaters domestically. That's not counting all the times it's been re-released, the international gross, any of that stuff. It made a lot of money on a very small budget. And to have this guy just basically come in and steal it all because they couldn't find distribution because of how intense the content was is just crazy. So thankfully they got that eventually figured out, and everyone involved got paid. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This was my first time watching the old Texas Chan Saw Massacre. I saw the remake, and I was not that impressed with this one, so I hadn't taken the time to go back and watch it. Part of the reason why I do 5 facts is so I can fill these gaps in horror history for me. And, man, this movie, I did not know it was going to be that uncomfortable, that terrifying, that just intense. There are times where it gets a little excessive with some of the editing and all that, but I feel like so much of this is done so well, and I can fully understand why it's hit that cult status. It's a movie that, especially for its era, did so many things right. The Texas Chan Saw Massacre informed people of what they wanted from slashers. They wanted to encapsulate the terror of human madness. The discomfort was so much more raw at the dinner table than it was in the remake. We just saw a man who was willing to kidnap and maim but somehow not enjoy the kill. We saw Leatherface, who was essentially terrified of his own family members, and that was a lot of the reason why he killed. It wasn't so much his compulsion, it was theirs. We saw the Hitch-Hiker, who, in that car scene, that started off this movie intensely creepy very, very fast. Like, you just see this guy who looks like he's full-on tweaking out and just making the scene as uncomfortable as humanly possible. You also see him being ghoulish and robbing from graves later. It's so strange that Leatherface did seem to have trouble with some of this because he just towers over them, but he didn't have the cognitive ability to fully understand that he would have been able to take any of his brothers out without any trouble. One of the other things that's interesting about Leatherface is that he's so blank behind the mask. He's sort of a non-character. He takes on the attributes of the mask, whether it be the scared homemaker, the ferocious butcher, or the pretty girl. He just falls into those roles, and there's not much about the actual man inside himself. And this sort of blankness went a long way to making Jason, Mike Myers, like all these other major slasher killers from future generations. Behind the mask was an inhuman monstrosity, a brick wall devoid of conscience and empathy. And I think that's what truly scares us about these sorts of things. It's not just the size, but the lack of humanity. And I haven't seen a slasher that encapsulated that so well in a long time. So it was a lot of fun to get to catch up on this movie. Anyway, that's going to do it all for 5 Facts this week. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on Texas Chan Saw Massacre. What did you think of it? What did you think of the remake? Tell me all about it, and we will see you in 2 weeks with more 5 Facts.